All right, I'm back. So let me just pick up where I left off. And I was talking about preclinical testing, which is done on animals. And I know it's inhumane, it's unethical. We should do everything we can to stop such cruelty. I get that. But I am talking about what is, not what we wish it to be. And I'm sure that there are some people who can speak to that issue much better than I can. Listen, there are some things that we could do, but I'm looking at the fact that we can't even do masking and social distancing. So how are we going to handle something that big? This is my idea about it. Animal testing is something that happens because of our crazy behavior. We don't take care of ourselves, and so scientists have to figure out, okay, what drug can we use to help them with their cardiac disease since they're not taking care of themselves. Do you get where I'm coming from? Anyway, preclinical testing, it can last about a year or more. Then they have to sign off on that, okay, before it can go to the clinical trials, phase one. So phase one of the clinical trials involve healthy volunteers. These are people who actually consented to be in the trial. They have not been forced to be there. No one has put a gun to their heads. They actually say, yeah, I'll do it. And they get paid. Sometimes you get paid a good deal. I was actually offered the opportunity to be in a trial. It was some kind of diabetic trial. And the reason why I didn't, because it was a time issue, and also I didn't want them to mess around with my diet, because that's what they were going to do. I wasn't so much afraid of what medication they were going to give me. I was more afraid of, oh, wow, they're going to bump up my blood glucose, and I don't want that. I feel too good right now. Any case, hats off to those who actually do that, where they volunteer to be in these trials. Usually less than 100. They're testing for side effects, testing for safety. It's got to pass the muster in terms of toxicity. Then once that happens, they sign off. Then they go to phase two. Phase two, they open it up. More people, maybe up to 300. These are people who actually have the condition that's being studied. You're testing for effectiveness. You're testing for safety. Does it relieve or reverse the condition that's being targeted? Okay. And this is where you have the randomized, controlled, double-blind study. Randomized means that you're not just picking from one population. You're picking from several different kinds of populations, because you know that you are going to apply it to the general population at some point. So you do want it randomized. You also want it to be where you are dividing up that group between those who get the experimental drug or vaccine and those who get the placebo. The placebo is simply a sugar pill. It is inactive, or it has an inert substance that's not going to make you better or worse. It does nothing. So you want to make that comparison. You want to see the difference. You also have it where it's a double blind. Double blind simply means that those who are administering the experimental drug or vaccine versus the placebo, they don't know which is which. So they don't have any influence about that. Also, those who are receiving it, they don't know which is which. They don't know if they're getting the experimental drug or vaccine, or if they're getting the placebo. They do that because they want to eliminate bias. They don't want that kind of psychological influence. So that's important. So anytime you see a trial, you always want to look for that gold standard, that randomized, controlled double-blind study. Yes, there are trials that don't have that. You can sort of raise your eyebrows upon those. Now, not every clinical trial can have a gold standard, but I'm just throwing that out to you so you can kind of incorporate that in your thinking. And so once you go through that phase two, they've got to sign off on that in terms of the safety, in terms of effectiveness. Then you go to phase three, and this is where you open it up to several thousand subjects. Now your sample is really, really wide. And so even with COVID-19, they had a study where they had 40,000 subjects. That's pretty hefty. That's a good sample size. And usually these studies are over a year or more. Now, with COVID-19, it hasn't been over a year. Remember, this is Operation Warp Speed. There has been a lot of criticism on that. It's like, are we moving too fast? Because the longer you go with the study, the more reliable it's going to be. And the bigger the sample size, the more reliable it's going to be. So that increases one's confidence in the safety and effectiveness of whatever they're studying. Okay, so that's key. So phase 3 is very important because towards the end of phase 3, the FDA comes on board and they are going to give it either a thumbs up or a thumbs down in terms of distributing it to the general population. That's where we're at right now. We are on the cusp of the FDA giving approval so they can roll this thing out, the COVID-19 vaccine, out to the masses. Now, it's not going to go to the masses all at the same time. Those of us who are in healthcare, we're going to get it first. We won't have a choice. We're in healthcare. We're going to get it. And then they're going to go, to those who are in law enforcement and then nursing home residents, et cetera, et cetera. And they just keep going down the line. So this is very key. And just because it's going to the general population, it doesn't mean that they just stop the study. They're going to keep looking at it in terms of the safety and effectiveness. So it's almost like a study in perpetuity. All right. So that's very, very important. So keep that in mind as you look at this. Also, just note this, if I haven't said it already, all medications go through clinical trials. It's not like you go to the drugstore and you pick up something like a Sudafed and think, oh yeah, they just created this one in the basement and they tested it out a little bit and now they have it available for us. No. It has gone through a rigorous process before it gets to the general population. So you might be thinking, Henry, are you some kind of pharmaceutical rep or something? Are you trying to push drugs on us? No, I'm not even into pharmaceuticals. I rarely take them. I do remember a few years ago, I had a really bad headache. And it was because I didn't get enough sleep the previous night, maybe a little stressed out. But I knew that if I took some Tylenol, it would take care of it. Tylenol does work. It is geared towards headaches. So I reached for it. I wanted to read the expiration date because I knew that it had been on the shelf for quite some time, but I didn't know exactly how long. And then I found out that the expiration date was more than a year ago, and it hit me. Wow, I can't take this. And it has been more than a year since I have taken Tylenol. All right? So that should tell you a whole lot that I am not into pharmaceuticals. I live my life in such a way where I don't have to rely on pharmaceuticals. It is not my lifestyle. Will I take pharmaceuticals in an urgent or emergent situation? You bet I will, because I realize I live on a fallen planet. So I'm not going to be silly about it. But at the same time, I'm not going to rely on the pharmaceuticals as a lifestyle. But here's the punchline, people. What we're dealing with, COVID-19, is not about me, and it's not about you on an individual level. It is about the masses. If you're thinking like a scientist, you have to answer the question, what do you do for the masses? Because I can sit here and I can talk about I'm healthy as a goat and that I rarely do pharmaceuticals and, I frown upon certain things as far as the medical establishment, but that doesn't get us anywhere. That doesn't answer the question about what do we do for the masses. I can even go so far to say, well, I don't trust big pharma, and I don't, not carte blanche. Or I can say, I don't trust the medical establishment, and I don't, not carte blanche. Or mass media, and I don't, not carte blanche. But again, That doesn't get us anywhere. What we need to do is look at the evidence that is in front of us. It's okay to be distrustful. We live on a planet where a lot of bad things have happened and continue to happen. So I'm not knocking that. I think that there should be a healthy dose of paranoia. Not too much, but you need to have that. But at the same time, you need discernment. If you just have distrust and no discernment, you're going to be out of balance. You're going to be into the extreme zone. And that's what I'm beginning to hear and see with a lot of people as this vaccine is around the corner. People are just kind of going to the extreme and talking about what has happened in the past and all of this boogeyman narratives, and you're not really using discernment. What are you going to do with the masses? That's the big question. Because again, we can sit on our loft and say, oh yeah, this has happened in 1932, the Tuskegee experiment. I get that. I definitely understand that. I've been on this earth for more than 6 decades. I'm not naive. That was cruel. But what are we going to do now? Okay? What has happened in the past, that speaks to the distrust. We need to be distrustful. But we've got COVID-19 going, and it's killing a lot of people. How long do we want to do this? How long you want to wear masks? How long you want to social distance? Listen, not only is this not about you and I, but it's not even about the United States. Not alone. Other countries are hurting. They've been hit by COVID, and they are waiting for us to launch the vaccine so they can benefit. See, they don't have the resources and money that we do, so they need the vaccine. This is a worldwide problem. So I think it's just so problematic just to be thinking about your own little, silo narrative. That's what I'm saying. Please use discernment. Begin to think like a scientist. You don't have to be a scientist in order to think like one, at least conceptually. Look, I know of someone who had 2 restaurants. She was running 2 restaurants, her family. She had to close them down because of this COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of businesses have closed down. This is having impact in myriad ways. She had to close it down. It devastated her. She was scrambling, didn't know what to do. Depression, suicidal thoughts. Eventually, she committed suicide. So, let this be some kind of lesson where we open up our lenses and see the bigger picture. Let's get a better perspective, because I'm afraid that some perspectives out there are far too narrow, and you're not looking at some of the details, you're not looking at the process, you're not using discernment. Think like a scientist. It will benefit you. I'm sure of it. Peace out.